I've been working on the disease to please a lot. And as you've heard me say that in 1989, I had a real big breakthrough with that, reading Gary Zuko's book on intention. So I began actually living an intentional life, where I don't make any choice unless I reflect on what is my real pure motivation for doing it. Because I do know the law of cause and effect that tells me the intention directs even the cause, so that even before you take an action, there's a reason why you're taking that action. And the reason for the action is the thing that's actually going to manifest in your life on the other side. That's what's going to be returned to you, that intention. So that was very helpful with the disease to please, because I was always giving, and then I was always so flabbergasted when people would come back and request more. And I couldn't fathom why they were requesting more. Yes, people request more because your motive to give it is so that they perceive that you're nice. That's your actual motive. Yes, they do perceive you're nice. They do perceive you're nice. And that is why they do keep returning. They return since you're the good one, you're going to agree when even you don't mean no. So you're the one I'm going to call to take my kids when I don't or can't, because you're going to agree even if you don't want to, because you're going to say yes. So that's why individuals tend to come back over and over again when your intention is not so clear. So that removed a lot of fear from me. But at least for me, clarity of intention made me live a more fearless life. You cannot live a brave life without disappointing some people. But those people who get disappointed, it's really okay. The people who really care about you, the people who are cheering for your rise, will not be disappointed. The only individuals who get disappointed are those who are disappointed individuals who have an agenda of their own and whose agenda is not the same as your agenda. And that's how I become brave. I tell you, well, those people who actually care for you, who are cheering for your rise, those people who are cheering for your rise are going to be all right when you say no. I never see any comments that are from negative individuals. If I do begin to read something and cut it off, I will. I will not accept. I will not accept that. I have a kitchen cabinet, and I've had a kitchen cabinet since my initial days of work. Various people have occupied that kitchen cabinet over the years, but there are a few individuals who are my resource, who I know are going to inform me about the truth. Your cabinet will filter through all those comments, because feedback is good and you can receive it real time. Now, your cabinet will filter through and they can give to you the things even that are negative but that are not mean-spirited. I'd ridden the wave of the glory and the victory of 25 years of The Oprah Show and was attempting to construct the pieces of having a network. Without the appropriate pieces, I was essentially relying on other people's concepts of how to do it. And it wasn't until I had the good judgment to hire my own team of individuals who I'd been working with for, the last decade, that things began to actually work for me. And, one of the wonderful, great things about for me to have done interviews all these years on The Oprah Show and on OWN was that I got to learn from other people's mistakes. So I listened extremely closely to the stories, and I got to hear everything and everyone, all the theories and all the stories and all the layers and layers of dysfunction, and along with people's successes and their triumph. I absorbed it. I was a student of it. I wasn't only a talk show host, I was a student. I became a student of life, other people's lives, and how to live well by listening to those stories. So I paid real attention. I'm at a stage of my life where I can literally celebrate in the knowing space that I have. There is this feeling of certainty that only comes, I believe, when you know and are certain that you are doing life well. And not from the perspective of having heaps of things, but living life from the sense space. When you're living bravely because you're living your truth. It was on my show that I absolutely learned for sure for myself, through other people's stories, that there really isn't any such thing as failure. and I could see the thread of courage that was needed every time you fell down. I could also see that failure was just there to tell you to go another way. It's just there to say, hi, not that way over there, not over here, wrong place. And once I knew that, it was easier to be brave for me. Education is about the most significant thing because that is what freed me. Education is what freed me. The power to read saved my life. I would have been a completely different individual if I had not been learning to read when I was at a young age. My whole life experience, my capacity to have faith in myself, and even during my darkest moments of sexual abuse and being physically abused and so on, I knew that there was another way. I knew that there was a way out. I knew that there was another type of life because I'd read about it. I knew that there were other worlds and there was another type of being, and so it saved my life. So that's why I now focus my attention on trying to do the same thing for other people. Education. I don't believe you ever stop sharing. I really don't. I think it's something that is always going on, and it's not always about having the ability to write a check. It's having the ability to touch someone's life in such a manner that Mrs. Duncan touched mine. It's having the ability to make a child recognize the light in him or her, making someone else realize that for themselves. I realized that if I did not have the money, listening to someone who had it, I'd probably not believe them, because you can't believe it, because if you do not have money and you are just trying to make ends meet, you think if you just could make ends meet, that would make everything all right for you. What I do know is that if you work that you enjoy and work that makes you whole, the rest will fall into place. And that I really believe that the reason why I've been so financially well off is because my passion has never, ever, for 1 second, been money. And the fact that money has appeared has really taken me aback. I've just been utterly surprised and thrilled and extremely pleased, and it's so many times overpowered by it. But the finances have never been the priority. The reason, I believe if you know whether or not you're on the path to success is whether or not you would do your job and not receive pay for it. And I would do this job and have a second job to support myself if no one paid me just to be able to do it. That's how you know you're on the right path. One of the things that if I can pat myself on the back about is that I make an effort to put myself around people who are smarter than I am. I believe that knowing how to be as good as you can be is a product of knowing who you are and what you can and cannot do. And what you can't do is more vital than what you can do if what you can't do is going to hold you back from flying as high as you can. Now, when my attorney first approached me and said, you can have your own show, it literally put the ceiling off my mind because I had never even thought that high before. I never even thought that was even a possibility. And everyone needs someone in their life to say, yes, you can do this. I have a niece, I have a niece who a number of years ago, I told her the same thing my dad told me. I told her, you are too smart to get C's. I overheard my father talking. We were in the process of crossing the street one day, and she was discussing her grades. You're too smart to do that. You could be an A student. And she responded, do you really think I can? Oh, of course. You're such a smart person. And she began getting A's and told me a year later, nobody ever told me I could. And I believe that one of the greatest things to learn is that we are all accountable for our lives. But no one makes it through this life by themselves. Everyone needs someone to lead them out or guide them up. Everyone does.
I am most comfortable in environments where other individuals are more intelligent than I. I feel I am always able to learn something from them. One of the other large things that I have learned, specifically in business, is that you owe it to yourself to learn as much as you can about your business. And so I sign every check, even though it is now laborious, because the bills that come in from operating, keeping a studio, from Federal Express to zero, to every tape that needs to be fixed and so on, it adds up. I've have stacks and piles of checks to sign, and I know that there are many successful people that don't do that. I still retain a tenement mentality. I've been extremely, extremely poor in my life, and therefore the concept of having money and not having to be accountable and knowing how much money you've got and being in control of it is not something that I can personally accept. I realize that there are individuals who can do it, but it isn't something that is possible for me. I have to know where it is. I mean, there are moments when I think I need to go to the bank and say, show it to me, because, just seeing it on paper, anyone can print out paper. So, yeah, I watch it closely and trying to take responsibility for it. But my business success is when I first began being a, quote, businesswoman, I was concerned about how do you do this? And what I found out was that you do this the same way as you do anything else. You be fair, try to be honest with other people, and you be fair. What I am certain about is that if you concentrate on the content, the success will follow. And most importantly, make failure your buddy. There are going to be periods, of course, when you're going to succeed a great deal. A lot of things are going to go your way, and it's great to soak in that adulation and feel good about your successes. But it's the times that go wrong, when you stumble or fail, that you're actually going to learn the most about yourself. You understand all those years on The Oprah Show? 25 years. We were the top-rated show for 25 years, and that is because I lived with the purpose to serve the audience. When I was able to shift the paradigm to start to looking at, wow, what I have instead of what I don't have, what I have instead of what I thought I'd lost, I was able to begin to turn things around. But it's those moments of being of uncertainty. It's the moments where all of my mistakes show up on the evening news. I can know if I made a mistake, it's on the CNN crawl. I can read all about it. But learning from the times when things weren't going so well, being able to get still to connect with that which I know is God, the force, the power, the thing higher than myself, and to come back and see that in order to go forward, you go forward by taking the next right step. You don't need to know everything to do. You don't need to know all of the steps to make. Just what is the next good move? And then there's this. I leave you with this. Nobody makes it alone. Nobody. I don't care what they look like. I don't care what their Insta posts say. Nobody makes it alone. And so you will get nowhere without a spiritual practice. You need a spiritual practice. And by that, I mean not necessarily religion. For some people, it is church. For some people, it is meditating. For some people, it's dancing. Some people, it's singing. But you've got to learn how to cultivate that which is the essence of you. You've got to learn how to give back to yourself on a continuous basis. I am devoted to service. Service through my work, service through my life's purpose. And if you take a commitment, a conscious intention to be devoted to the work that you do, to the relationships that you have, your life will unfold with such beauty and grace through that devotion. Daily, until the very end performances of the Oprah Winfrey Show, I would have the producers sit down with me and let me know in advance what their vision for each show was. Because I realized during the second year of working on that show that it wasn't all about being on TV and performing, that there was this experience, this gift I could present to people via the medium of a television show to get a better glimpse of themselves through the stories that we're presenting, and through those stories, serve themselves better in terms of improving their lives. So I began to employ television as an instrument of service. So as you're attempting to figure out what do I do, how do I do it, first of all, I will tell you this, that when you don't know what to do, you do nothing. You get still until you do know. Because when you have to ask everybody else, should I do this, and that's whether it's buying a pair of shoes or going with a guy, buying a house, taking a job, should I, when you have to ask everybody else, it means you don't really know the answer fully yourself. So you get still, be still, and know the answer will come. So many are concerned about creating a brand. I hear young people on social media discussing their brand, and I used to dislike the word so much when people would say to me, "Oh, you have this brand," because I never even considered a brand. I just considered day in and day out making the best right choice for me. But now I own it because I know people view me as a brand, but for me, it is not a business. It is a matter of what do you stand for? And I will tell you something, you're nothing if you're not the truth. So I've made a living, I've made a life, I've made a fortune really by being true to myself. And that's if I could leave you with any message today, that is it. The greatest reward isn't financial rewards, although it's really great. You can have lots of wonderful shoes. Nothing wrong with wonderful shoes. But those of you who have lots of shoes get it that having wonderful shoes and a house full of shoes or cars or homes or square footage doesn't fill up your life. It doesn't. But living life of substance can. Substance through your service, your giving of your whole self. And the baseline for how do you live a life of substance is whatever is the truth for you, what do you stand for? When I first began earning money and it was, my paycheck or my income was printed everywhere. I mean, the first year I was like, did I really earn that kind of money? Oh my God. It was really hard for me to determine where my limits were because I'd come up poor and didn't have anything. So it's simple when you don't have anything and people ask you for cash. They say, I need 500. You say, I don't have because I'm just trying to get my rent paid. It's harder when your multi-million-dollar salary is now in the paper and you get a lot of friends and cousins you didn't have before. So how do you set boundaries for yourself? I was having a hard time setting boundaries on myself, for myself. Even strangers would just drop by my door in Chicago and say, oh, bro, I left my husband. Please help me. And I would because she knows I have it. So what I discovered is that, the reason why people keep appearing is because my intention is to make them believe that I'm such a nice person that you can request for anything, you can get me to do anything. I'm going to say yes. I'm going to say yes. So when Stevie called me this time, I figured I'd practice my first no on Stevie. Let's begin. Huge. He asked me to give some money to a charity, and I did not want to give to the charity because I have my own charities and I love a lot of people. But the issue is when you do have money, everyone's just going to think that you're just going to give to everything. So I told Stevie no. And being that person who has that sickness to please, I was waiting for him then to tell me, I will never talk to you. I will never call you. I will never sing a song for you. And he didn't. He just said, okay, it's okay. He said, okay, check you later. What I've learned from that is lots of times you will get angst and anxious about things. Put yourself in a state like somebody said this morning because her phone rang, they were flabbergasted over a phone. I said, really? You will put yourself in a state when the other person really isn't even considering you. So finding out that I could actually control for myself what the boundaries were, for me, what I wanted to do, give my money, give my time, give of my service to who I wanted to give it to. When I did that, I get to make that decision. Just because you have all of these demands on your time and on you doesn't mean that you have to say yes. You get to decide because you're the master of your fate. The captain of your soul is what William Ernest Henley said in Invicti. And realizing that really changed the meaning of my life in that I was no longer driven by what other people wanted me to do, but took charge of my own destiny, making choices based upon what do I feel is the next right move for me. I've lived with who do you think you are my entire life. Not from myself so much as what was shown to me, because who do you think you are? You're a little color girl from Mississippi. Who do you think you are? You're sitting up on national television. Who do you think you are that you can have who do you think you are that you can... So I used to dread hearing the phrase, who do you think you are? Or you must be pretty full of yourself. Now I work at being full. I want to be so full. I am overflowing. So when you see me coming, it ought to make you proud, to borrow a line from Maya Angelou's Phenomenal Women. When you see me coming, it ought to make you proud. And what you witness is a woman so full, I'm overflowing with enough to give to everyone else. I'm going to claim the fullness without ego or arrogance, but with an incredible sense of gratitude that I've been born during a time where I am female on the planet, and I get to have the great pleasure and liberty of filling myself up, knowing who you are, knowing who you
That only occurs when you have people around in your life who do not mean and want and wish the best for you. People who wish the best for you wish you to be your best. So my best advice to you is to be around people who are going to fill your cup until your cup runneth over. I did that. At the end of my show, I did my all-time favorite guest. That's difficult to do out of literally thousands and thousands. There's like 35,000 people I interviewed over the years. But there was one woman out of all the celebrities, out of all of the famous, non-famous, infamous people, one woman. Who was she? Her name is Tarai Trent. Listen to the story. Tarai Trent, who was born and grew up in a village in Zimbabwe, 11 years old. She's doing homework of her brother. She wishes to go to school. Her father says, no, the boy must go to school. You can't attend school. So she begins to do her brother's homework. She does homework of his brother. He attends school. He achieves all A's on his homework, yet he does not know the answer to the question. The teacher visits the village to inform what is happening here. This boy does not know the answers, but his homework's flawless. She learns that Tarai, his younger sister, does his homework. She pleads the father to let Tarai attend school. The father declines. She cannot attend school. At last, he marries her off. She gets married at 11 and 2 years old. She marries. She gives birth to 3 children before she is 18 years old. A lady visits the village from an NGO here, International, and inquires, "What are your dreams?" This is going to make me cry. Asks her, "What are your dreams?" This kid has never pondered over what her dreams were. She says, "Write down your dreams." She writes down her dreams on a sheet of paper, and she folds them in a tin can, and she buries them under a rock. The first dream was to be able to visit the school, go to a school in the United States of America, and obtain a college degree. She ends up, through miracle of the NGO, visiting the United States. She obtains a 4-year degree in 3 years. She returns to the rock in Zimbabwe. She writes down her second goal on the piece of paper. She buries it under the rock. She writes, "I want to obtain a master's degree." She returns to the United States. She obtains her master's degree. She returns to the United States. She obtains her master's degree. After the master's degree, she returns to the rock in Zimbabwe. She writes down her last goal is to obtain a doctorate degree. And last year, she became Dr. Tarai Trent. I met her in the Nicholas Kristof's book titled something, The Sky Below, The Sky or the Sky, and I was reading the story. I had Nicholas Kristof on the show. Nicholas Kristof, the renowned New York Times author. She wasn't there. She wasn't included in the chat. I'm reading the story. I can't believe this book, the story of this woman, while reading the story. So when we go to do the show, the producers have Nicholas Kristof on. They bring other guests on board, but this woman isn't present. I go, How did you not have her there? So we tape another show with Nicholas Kristof. We go back and we're going to find that woman, Tarai Trent, this time. By this time, she's in the United States. We traced her back to Zimbabwe, to the rock. We pulled the tin can from under the rock, and that is my favorite guest of all time. The reason why Tarai Trent is my all-time favorite guest is that she embodies in that one narrative of the little girl from a village in Zimbabwe who had a dream, the heart and depth and discipline to chase it. She embodies everything I attempted to convey in every episode in 25 years. She literally, through her life story, encapsulates the message that I was attempting to provide to each and every one of my viewers. You can keep trying. Don't give up. When I was around 8 years old, I spent my childhood in the church, and I was attending one of those Women's Day. You know how we have church all day long? The little girl who was supposed to be there to give a recitation had fallen sick, and so they asked my stepmother, "We need a little girl. Can Oprah come back and give a recitation this afternoon? My stepmother said, sure, I'll have her back here this afternoon. So by 4 o'clock, I had gone home and learned to recite Invictus by William Ernest Henley. It begins, out of the night that broods o'er earth and sea, I thank whatever gods may be for my unconquerable soul. I was reciting it and doing the pit from pole to pole. I didn't know what I was saying, but at the end of the poem, there's the stanza that says, it matters not how straight the gate, how charged with punishment the scrawl. I am the master of my fate. I am the captain of my soul. Now, my little 8-year-old mind did not entirely completely grasp the power and magnitude of those words, but they sounded good enough for me to memorize them and stick them on my mirror. And those words, I am the master of my fate, I am the captain of my soul, became a motto for me. What it meant was, I am accountable for the decisions that I make in life. I am accountable. Clearly, I matured and was better in a position to explain what those words actually are, and I learned in physics class the third law of motion. You know what that is. It is known as Newton's law, and it states, for every action, there is an equal and opposite reaction. So what does that mean? That means everything that you are sending out into the world, every action, there is an equal and opposite reaction. It means whatever you do, the energy of what you do, what you say, and most importantly, the energy of who you are is going out into the world, into your relationships, and that energy is always returning to you. You are in charge of the energy that you are drawing out into the world because that very energy, bam, is coming back to you every single time, whether or not you want to believe it, because it is law. Each and every one of us has a different talent, and the reason you and I are all so dysfunctional is because you're staring at everyone else's talent. Yeah, and wishing you had a part of theirs. All of the energy that you spend wishing about, thinking about, being jealous of, envious of anyone else is energy that you're not only releasing, it's going to come back to you in a negative way, but you're taking it away from you. All your energy should be compelled to, what do I have to give? What do I have to offer? How can I be utilized in service to something greater than myself? It no longer becomes a job, it becomes an offering to the world. Nobody's path is smooth or flawless. We all fall, we all stumble. If things go awry, you reach a dead end, as you will. It's just life's way of telling you time to take a different direction. So question every failure. This is what I do with every failure, with every crisis, with every hard time. I ask, what is this here to teach me? And as soon as you learn the lesson, you get to move forward. If you really learn the lesson, you pass. And you don't have to retake the class. If you don't learn the lesson, it shows up in a different pair of pants or skirt to give you some remedial work. And what I discovered is that challenges arise when you fail to listen to life whisper, because life always whispers to you first. And if you dismiss the whisper, earlier or later, you'll receive a scream. Whatever you resist persists. But if you ask the right question, not why is this happening, but what is this here to teach me? What is this here to teach me? It puts you in the place and space to receive the lesson that you need. My Carl friend who's written this beautiful book entitled A New Earth, all about allowing the awareness of who you are trigger everything that you do. He says it like this: don't respond against a bad circumstance, align yourself with that circumstance, and the solution will then emerge out of the challenge. Because giving up yourself isn't the same as giving in. It means responding as a responsible one. Okay, most of you know that when President Hennessy spoke, I began this school in Africa. And I began the school where I'm working to provide a shot at a future like yours. And I dedicated 5 years to ensuring that school was as lovely as the girls. I wanted each girl to see her worth mirrored in her environment. So I scrutinized every blueprint. I selected every pillow. I was examining the grout between the bricks. I knew every thread count of sheets. I selected every girl from the villages from 9 provinces.
And yet last fall, I was confronted with a crisis I never could have foreseen. I was informed that one of the dorm matrons was accused of sexual abuse. News that was, as you can imagine, news that was devastating. Then I wept really. I sobbed for half an hour, and then I said, let's do it. That's all you get is half an hour. You have to stay in the now. What you have to do in the now. So I called a child trauma expert. I assembled a team of investigators. I ensured the girls received counseling and support, and Gail and I boarded a plane and went to South Africa. And the entire time I kept asking myself that question, what is this here to teach me? And as hard as that process has been, I learned a lot. I get it now, the things I did wrong, because I had been listening to all the wrong things. I constructed that school from the outside in, when what truly was important was inside out. So it's something that we can all learn from in our lives as a whole. What is most important is what's inside. What is most important is the sense of integrity, of quality and beauty. I learned